Vulnerability is often misunderstood. We are taught from an early age that strength means having everything together, showing no weakness, and never letting others see us struggle. But the truth is, real strength comes from embracing vulnerability, from allowing ourselves to be seen as we are, and from walking paths that may not always be easy but are true to who we are. A woman who walks alone without a husband often finds herself at the center of societal expectations. People wonder why she isn't married, why she hasn't chosen the so-called secure path of partnership, why she continues forward without someone by her side. And yet, in doing so, she demonstrates an extraordinary kind of courage, the courage to be vulnerable in a world that tells her she should always be part of a pair. Vulnerability is not about weakness or uncertainty, it is about showing up in life with authenticity and without fear of judgment. To walk alone is to acknowledge that life does not always follow a single script. It is about saying, I am enough on my own. I am complete as I am. This does not mean that love or companionship is not valuable, it simply means that a woman's worth is not dependent on whether or not she has a husband. Vulnerability means standing firm in that belief, even when the world tries to tell her otherwise. It means resisting the pressure to conform just because society says she should. It means accepting that there will be moments of doubt, loneliness, and uncertainty, and choosing to keep moving forward anyway. One of the greatest myths about vulnerability is that it makes us weak. That if we show our true selves, if we admit that we don't have all the answers, we will be seen as fragile or incapable. But if we look at the strongest people we know, we'll see that their power comes from their willingness to be open to risk failure, to face discomfort, to embrace the unknown. A woman who walks alone is doing exactly that. She is stepping outside of expectations, risking judgment, and owning her story. That is strength in its purest form. There is a deep kind of power in choosing one's own path. In a world that often tries to define success in narrow terms, choosing something different takes resilience. A woman who walks alone may face moments where she questions her choices, where she feels the weight of expectations pressing down on her. But true courage is not about never having doubts, it is about acknowledging them and choosing to move forward anyway. Vulnerability allows us to admit that the road is not always easy, but it also allows us to recognize the beauty in walking it. When we embrace vulnerability, we also embrace connection. We stop pretending that life is meant to look a certain way, and we begin to connect with others in more meaningful ways. A woman who walks alone has the opportunity to build relationships based on authenticity rather than societal pressure. She can choose friendships, communities, and experiences that align with her values rather than fitting into a predetermined mold. She can be fully present in her own journey without constantly measuring herself against a set of external expectations. And perhaps most importantly, embracing vulnerability allows a woman to fully step into her own power. When she stops seeing her independence as something to defend and starts seeing it as something to celebrate, she unlocks a level of confidence that is truly transformative. She no longer feels the need to justify her choices to those who do not understand them. Instead, she focuses on creating a life that is fulfilling, joyful, and meaningful on her own terms. Walking alone is not about rejecting love or companionship, it is about refusing to settle for anything less than a life that feels right. It is about understanding that partnership should be a choice, not an obligation. It is about knowing that strength is not found in avoiding vulnerability but in embracing. Authenticity is one of the most powerful forces a person can embrace, yet it is often the hardest to fully live by. For a woman who walks alone without a husband, authenticity is not just a choice, it is a necessity. It means standing firm in who she is, even when the world expects her to be someone else. It means defining her life on her own terms, rather than bending to societal expectations that tell her she should be a wife or that her happiness should come from being part of a couple. It means embracing her true self, even when that self does not fit into the traditional mold. Living authentically requires deep self-awareness. It demands an understanding of what truly brings fulfillment, joy, and purpose. Many people go through life following paths that were laid out for them by others, by family, by culture, by history. Women, in particular, have been conditioned to believe that their value is often tied to their relationships, that being a wife is a marker of success, and that choosing to walk alone is somehow a rejection of love, stability, or fulfillment. But the truth is, authenticity is about choosing what aligns with one's deepest values rather than what aligns with external expectations. A woman who walks alone is not necessarily rejecting companionship, but she is rejecting the idea that she must conform to a predefined role to be considered successful. She is saying, I will not live my life based on someone else's blueprint. I will not pretend to be someone I am not just to fit in. That kind of decision is not easy. It means confronting fears, questioning long held beliefs, and sometimes standing in solitude while others question her choices. But in that solitude, there is also immense strength. Because when a woman chooses to live authentically, she is choosing freedom over conformity, purpose over approval, and self respect over societal validation. Authenticity also means embracing imperfection. The world often paints an idealized picture of what life should look like, especially for women. It tells them they should be desirable, nurturing, accommodating, and above all, paired with a partner. It creates an illusion that happiness is only found in traditional relationships, and that a woman who walks alone is somehow missing out. But authenticity shatters that illusion. It acknowledges that life is not about perfection, it is about alignment. It is about making choices that feel right, even when they do not make sense to others. It is about owning every part of the journey, including the uncertainties and the challenges. Being true to oneself does not mean that the path is always smooth. There will be moments of doubt, moments of loneliness, moments when the pressure to conform feels overwhelming. But authenticity is not about never experiencing struggle, it is about refusing to let that struggle force a person into being someone they are not. A woman who walks alone may have moments where she wonders if life would be easier had she chosen a different path. But deep down, she knows that living a life that is true to her values, rather than one that is shaped by external pressures, is the only way to truly be free. Authenticity also creates deeper, more meaningful connections. When a woman is true to herself, she attracts relationships that are based on mutual respect rather than obligation. She builds friendships that celebrate her independence rather than question it. She surrounds herself with people who value her for who she is, rather than for who she is supposed to be. There is something profoundly liberating about knowing that the people in her life are there not because she followed a traditional script, but because they genuinely align with her journey. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of authenticity is that it gives others permission to do the same. When a woman stands confidently in her truth, she challenges the idea that there is only one way to live. Shikiko. Resilience is not just about enduring hardship, it is about rising despite it. It is about standing tall when the world questions your choices, about moving forward even when doubt creeps in, and about staying true to yourself despite the judgments of others. A woman who walks alone without a husband understands this deeply. She has chosen a path that does not always align with society's expectations, and for that, she often faces scrutiny. But resilience is not about avoiding judgment, it is about learning to thrive in spite of it. When a woman decides to live life on her own terms, the world does not always respond with encouragement. Instead, she is met with questions, assumptions, and sometimes even pity. Why isn't she married? Doesn't she want a family? Is she afraid of commitment? These are the kinds of remarks that attempt to define her worth based on outdated beliefs. But resilience is about refusing to let these voices shape her self-perception. It is about recognizing that judgment often says more about the people giving it than it does about the person receiving it. Resilience requires a strong sense of self. It demands the ability to separate one's identity from external validation. Many people tie their self-worth to the approval of others, bending and adjusting their lives to fit expectations that may not even align with their true desires. But a woman who walks alone must cultivate a different kind of strength. She must be willing to trust herself, to believe in her own path, even when others do not understand it. She must be able to stand in a room full of people who question her choices and remain unwavering in her conviction that her life is her own to shape. One of the greatest challenges in facing judgment is the temptation to prove oneself. There is an instinct to explain, to justify, to make others see why the path of independence is not a loss but a choice. But true resilience is not found in explanation, it is found in quiet confidence. It is found in the understanding that not everyone will understand, and that is okay. The moment a woman stops seeking validation from those who do not share her vision is the moment she becomes truly free. Judgment often stems from fear of the unfamiliar, fear of what challenges long-standing traditions, fear of what cannot be easily categorized. A woman who walks alone represents something different, something that disrupts the norm. She is a reminder that there is more than one way to live, more than one way to be fulfilled. And for some, that idea is unsettling. But resilience is about recognizing that another person's discomfort is not her burden to carry. It is about refusing to shrink in order to make others more comfortable. Resilience is also about endurance. The judgments do not always come from strangers, they often come from family, from friends, from people whose opinions hold weight. It takes immense strength to continue walking one's own path when the people closest to you question it. It takes courage to listen to their concerns, to acknowledge their perspectives, and still choose to live in a way that feels right. It is in these moments that resilience is tested the most, not when criticism comes from those who do not matter, but when it comes from those who do. But resilience is not just about enduring judgment, it is about thriving beyond it. It is about transforming doubt into motivation, about proving through action rather than words that fulfillment is not dependent on marriage or societal validation. A woman who walks alone does not live in defiance, she lives in purpose. Her choices are not reactions to what others think, but reflections of what she truly wants. And in that, she becomes unstoppable. With time, resilience becomes second nature. What once felt like resistance becomes ease. What once felt like defiance becomes normal. The voices that once felt loud begin to fade, replaced by the quiet sea.